and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. You can click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it is the YouTube channel or places like Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, basically wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. There you will find things like Leaving the Collection, Life Soundtrack as far as series, as well as excerpts of Q&As and stuff like that I take at various film festivals or recently Dragon Con, and that is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. So this is a continuation of a discussion that I had back in early May with this filmmaker. And it was such a good conversation. I wanted to continue it. And even though, I mean, you guys just heard that back in July when this episode came out, the filmmaker is Kiera Faber. She is an animator. She had a short film at the Atlanta Film Festival, The Garden Sees Fire, which you can read my review of at In Their Own League. And the discussion that we had, which you can listen to on that episode of the podcast, it was episode 168, I believe, of the podcast. And you can listen to that discussion. We will probably touch on some of the same material there in this one, but I wanted to just kind of continue this discussion because of the fact that it was such a great experience talking with her back in May. Kiera, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Brian. It's such an honor and privilege and really such a treat to be with you today. Thanks for making time for me.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm glad we were able to kind of settle on a time to do this. So my first question can be, like I said, can be similar to one that I asked you at the Atlanta Film Festival. What is it about filmmaking what inspired you to get into filmmaking?
I think that when we had our conversation together, I really enjoyed the exchange we had in terms of, I think of film as so much of almost a back and forth between the filmmaker and the audience. And I think that sense of connectivity that a filmmaker can have with an audience, I think is truly profound. And I think because of the time-based medium where we see these little snippets for just such a brief moment in time, I think that's just truly magical because what I retain and might have meaning for me might be so different than someone else. And so I love how the combination of psychology and who we are as complicated beings and people and the collective experience in the cinema and people sitting together. And I love hearing when people might laugh and when it was like not at all my intent. And I think that's just truly also incredibly special. So I think just the medium to me has such a power for bringing people together in community in a way that is truly unique to the medium. So I don't know that's why it says answers exactly why I get into it or like how exactly, but that's like something that I've been thinking a lot about.
Well, and I do think that is an important part of it because of the fact that it answers the question of what intrigues you about filmmaking so much, which, look, a lot of people get into filmmaking because they want to tell stories. They want to engage in an audience in a way through telling stories. And I think that communal experience is extremely important between the film and the audience. And the director is sort of the go-between in a way because of the fact that their story that is bringing that connection, whether it's good or bad on the part of the audience to the audience. And I think that's one of the things that, to a certain extent, I mean, especially like we talked at the Atlanta Film Festival, we were getting ready to watch one of the films there. And it's one of those things where, yes, you can have that, you can sort of have that same dialogue with a film. You can have that same level of engagement with a film at home.
Mm-hmm.
It is a different beast when you are talking about in a theater
Mm-hmm.
with an audience, with who are all going to bring their own personal experiences and their own lives into that dialogue. And I
Yeah.
think that is, as much as some people want to say, oh no, streaming is the future, streaming is the way to go, theaters are never going to go away completely because the theatrical experience is just so singular.
Yeah.
And whether you're talking about watching a live performance of a comedian, or whether you're talking about a theatrical performance in terms of theater, or
Mm-hmm.
whether you're talking about in a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, there are other things that are going to impact it, of course, because of technology and just kind of the nature of audiences now.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, it's like I love watching movie in a theater and not necessarily knowing what to expect, and even if I do know what to expect in terms of the plot,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily knowing if that same plot point is going to reach me the same way the second time around if I've
Mm-hmm.
already seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of those things that is just so unique about the theatrical experience compared to just watching it at home.
And how other people's response might affect your interpretation of that same moment in a moment of time,
Yeah.
right? And I think that then it becomes and so in some way a little bit of participatory experience. And for me, I feel like in some ways I've even more passionate about seeing films in person with others, having, gone to a lot of festivals for Garden Cease Fire and kind of traveling with it and kind of engaging with it, as almost like a kind of a traveler along with the film. And, it's just been just really so special and so informative to me in an interesting way, just about that experience with the audience. And so I feel even more passionate about, I think, making films and being really cognizant of the audience being an active participant in that experience and really being meaningful to me. Yeah.
So we talked before the Garden Cease Fire played at the Atlanta Film Festival, but we really haven't. I mean, we've talked since, but we haven't really talked about that particular experience since. So what was the reaction like in Atlanta after your film played and during that short film block?
Oh my gosh, I have to try and think back. I've had so many experiences since then. I feel like what I really enjoyed so much with Atlanta was also there were so many fellow filmmakers there. There was maybe 4 of us there. And I was just at Portland, where there was 8 or 9 of us that were there, which was just an extraordinary experience. And I think it's really interesting to hear the same question asked to this same filmmakers and how they interpret that question and how it relates to their own work. I just found the audience to be incredibly, probably one of the smartest audiences that I've experienced as Atlanta, in terms of really engaged with the nuances that some might miss in my work. And I felt like people really attended to the sound design. People really attended to kind of the destruction of the environment, which is like an underlying theme that some people sort of pay attention to. But like you had talked a lot about that. I felt like there were some really beautiful questions about that. I just felt like getting it in a conceptual way that felt elevated, for a lack of a better word, in terms of like really seeing it for the experimental abstract narrative that it is, and letting themselves be kind of taken on that journey instead of kind of fighting that and feeling like a little letting themselves maybe be sort of uncomfortable for a few minutes, and that like I have to kind of like think about what I'm kind of exploring, kind of taking these little threads and kind of weaving my own narrative to go along with this work and the kind of this art piece I'm seeing. And so I felt like the audience was really receptive to that, and went along for the journey and brought themselves into the work. And I thought that was just a really amazing experience in Atlanta. I loved my time there. It was a brilliant festival.
It's yeah. I mean, I'm always I'm always very impressed with the way that they program the festival. You know, both on the short film side as well as the featured side. Like it's weird because of the fact that this year I feel like, and it was just the nature of the programming in general, kind of just the way things scheduled out and played out. I felt like the second half of the festival was probably stronger than the first half this year. Just because of the fact that it felt like there were just, in terms of the features especially, I felt like there were better films that played later in the festival as opposed to in, you know, there were some really good films. There were some films I really enjoyed that first weekend of the year, the festival. But at the same time, it's like the ones that really connected with me were after the fact. But I know I always try to catch several of the short films. Like we talked about short film blocks. We talked about in back in May where, you know, unfortunately I was unable to make your block in person, but I did make a point of seeing it after the fact. And one of and yes, it was at home, and that's not the best way to watch it, but at the same time, that's just the nature of my scheduling goes. I do love that no two films are going to be the same in terms of those blocks. I think there's always going to be something that distinguishes, whether it's thematically, whether it's visually, whether it's the way the soundtrack works in animated film blocks. And that I think that's one of the most exciting things about it. It's one of the reasons I do check those out on a regular basis, regardless of which film festival I'm going to. And what is it? What is, you talked a little bit about the Q&A and how many different filmmakers were at Atlanta versus how many different filmmakers were at Portland. What is it about those those live Q&A sessions? Is there something, when you listen to other filmmakers talking about their films, is there something that are there occasionally things that you'll latch on to from what they're talking about that may go into your work?
That's a great question. I think they can become like, you know, threads in themselves and kind of a catalyst to maybe talk about something that maybe I might not have thought about in my own work, and almost like a little bit of an insight. And then I can maybe see my work in a different way through how maybe they work. And, you know, I'm especially more narrative thinking filmmakers and animators. Sometimes it's interesting to hear how they speak about, you know, telling a story that way, and noticing the difference in kind of commonalities as well. And I think it's kind of interesting just to see the breadth within the medium. And I think that's what's so exciting to me, especially in the short format. It's like you kind of said, like there's just, I think it's really exciting some of the risks that people take in that format. And I think that kind of it excites me, especially in the short format. And I think especially within the genre of animation, there can be, like you said, so much variety. It's exciting to see what people are using with their creativity and how they're kind of designing these new worlds.
Yeah, short films are always, it's always, film critics, I do feel like film critics do need to make a point of watching short films, not just the ones that get Oscar nominated every year, but especially if you cover festivals, at least watch some of the short film blocks, just because of the fact that you do get to see how different filmmakers approach that time constraint.
Yeah, exactly.
And approach, okay, how am I going to boil this narrative, these themes down to their essence in a very limited amount of time? And that's always very exciting. And that is one of the things that I know when I really started to get to know filmmakers through their films, one of the things that really helped me in doing that was watching a lot of short films. And the fact of the matter is, it's like what that allows you to do is it allows you to almost not entirely, but almost throw a lot of the feature narrative rules out the window.
Yeah, kind of brilliant
Because
that way.
then you have to go, okay, so how are they going to approach this problem at this length?
Hmm.
And it's like one of the first things you'll notice, especially watching a short film block at home, is how long is it? And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, so do they tell the story in a way that makes sense for that length? Is there something that maybe they could have expanded on that would have improved it? Is there something that they could have trimmed down that could have improved
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And I think that type of those type of storytelling challenges is what makes short films so fascinating to watch.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think like sometimes working within constraints can, generate really new creativity in a way that, like you said, kind of throwing things out and allowing just the art form itself to kind of speak. And I think that can be, to me, really exciting being someone who doesn't like to follow rules. So, yeah.
Yeah. What is So I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit about your animation style back in the film festival. So yours is very much more of an experimental narrative style,
Mhm.
but it's also one of the things I do really like about Seas Fire is that it uses several different techniques of animation to tell its story.
Mhm.
How did you work out, like, here's the type of animation I want to use for this part of the film?
Mhm.
How do I want, what do I how do I want to approach bringing this particular element of the story to life? How do you go through those decisions as a filmmaker?
That's a great question. For the Garden Seeds Fire, somehow I just had this intuitive sense of what I wanted each scene, like how I was going to do. I knew all the animation styles that I wanted to do. And some of that was based on kind of physical constraints in terms of if I wanted a certain type of bird to go through the sky. I knew that I didn't want to make all these birds by hand for armature puppets. And so I knew that I was going to draw it. To me, that felt more accessible and like like a way that I could make that scene visually do what I wanted to do. And then and then the hand painting of the film, which I did frame by frame. I just love that type of detail, kind of animation. And so
Mhm.
that kind of was something that I really wanted to pull into the film. And so for this next film that I'm working on, I'm going to take that even further. So I am thinking of each character existing as an armatured puppet, also existing as a paper hinged character, and also as a drawing. And so that I could have cell drawing as well. So having each character exist in those three kind of states as so. So it's, some to be stop motion, some to be 2D cell drawn. And so I think I'm even like, instead of just doing it based on scenes, I'm doing it based on maybe how I could envision that character doing certain motions that like for the drawing, it has that implied texture with the color pencil and the paper, and so kind of visualizing that and thinking about what that flatter but implied texture means. I kind of a more maybe contemplative kind of feeling versus the armatured puppets and and physically moving in a space, having that sense of three-dimensional space around it as well. So it's actually engaging with the space. Where with the drawing animation, I feel like we're kind of maybe more coming into it as a viewer, almost getting inside and sitting kind of with them, and maybe we'll kind of pulling it back a little bit with the stop motion. So that's kind of where I'm kind of going with it now. But again, it's kind of I just really love combining all the different styles into one film. with that, really engaging the ultimate in terms of tactility, in terms of drawing, and then moving in the physical moving of those characters. So that's kind of where I'm
Okay.
going right now with it. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any times when you have gotten into the process of actually making the film and you see all of the elements in front of you as you're getting ready to shoot, and you start to think, maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe I need to change that up. And if you have had those process, if you have had those thoughts, what is the process when you're in the middle of making the film, having to completely reconfigure your thinking on a particular element of film, whether you have to change an animation style or whether you have to rethink about what a scene is going to look like.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had to deal with that too much in the past.
Okay.
But it's going to be something that I have to consider for this next film.
All
So,
right.
so your question is really relevant to where I am kind of now in my process. And so because my left hand is partly paralyzed, my partner helps me with a lot of the 3D armature puppet motions. So I want to incorporate more of the 2D cell drawings. So those characters existing in that two-dimensional space is going to be advantageous for me in that I can do all of that completely unassisted. I can do that all on my own. And so I think that kind of then thinking about, I also want to do some of this animation. It's going to occur in constructed sets in my studio. And then also I'm going to have one part of the film be animated outside with the real world as a live backdrop. And that, of course, is restricted based on weather, time, and availability of my partner to help. And so originally I had the whole film was going to take place outside. And now we're just kind of thinking about how much access I have to working with another person. I'm making this now like a little small section of the film, and it's going to kind of be this arc where we start in two sets, and this middle point is this outside engagement of the outside world with the puppets. And so so basically it's completely kind of working within constraints and kind of getting the idea of the short format, but also related to what can I physically do with what I have, the resources I have, and how can I make the film be as successful and how I vision it, but then kind of working within some physical restraints that I literally have and want to work, but still want to make the kind of work I want to make. So, so it's going to be kind of a change for this next film, because it's definitely going to be more drawing animation and more of these paper hinged, which will be stop motion, but more of this. So it's going to be a little bit different. So we'll see how that comes together. It's a bit of a risk because I've never done quite that much. Yeah. So your question is actually really pertinent for this time in my practice.
Okay. When you begin planning out a new film, do you approach it from a perspective of just writing out a script, thinking of the shots that you want to do, any dialogue, and whether it's that way or not, do you involve almost storyboarding the process and at least do sketches where you start to think about how you're going to visualize certain aspects of the film?
So I start off just doing tons of I just start if a scene or a character or a thought comes into my head, I just start kind of making like a spreadsheet of these ideas. And then I start to kind of organize that. So I just started after Atlanta, actually. So I've had before Atlanta, maybe for the last year and a half, I've had this page and just spreadsheet of just little notes. It's all written down, nothing drawn or anything like that. And then after Atlanta, I think my experience there, I think our exchange, getting to talk with, between you and I, getting to talk about film and sound and the the community aspect of of cinema. I have to be honest, really inspired me. And so, and then my time in Atlanta really inspired me. And so I'm like, okay, I have to really seriously start working on this next film. So I took all those notes and tried to organize it into like what is a kind of a character's characteristic, an attribute of a character, what was related to a scene, what was related to a theme, and kind of group it that way. So tons of writing. And then I started sketching these characters, and it was literally just from pulling little bits of notes into who they might be. But not really having their personalities or traits yet, but just kind of physically what their physical form might be. And I've had this idea for them being done in Prussian blue, so they could be in cyanotype, which is a type of historic alternative processes, which is kind of like a blueprint. And then I also do these drawings in blue colored pencil. So I had this idea. So I started sketching them, and I have to say I'm a very slow drawer. I am not a fast drawer, so it took me quite a while to do them. I have them all done now. And there's 4 main characters. And then I think it's then just more writing, like kind of seeing it in my mind and trying to get it on paper. And I did one sketch for this kind of narrative arc of where I see the film going from dark to light, and that idea of this middle space being outside with the characters. But that's the only sketch I've done so far, other than making the characters into serious drawings. But I've not done any. I do very little storyboarding.
Okay.
I do a lot. I'll do a couple little sketches of the sets when I kind of get more formal ideas on that. And I just do tons of writing. Like I end up I will make a script when I'm ready to start shooting, and that'll be all done in a spreadsheet. But I'm much more of a writer than yeah, so I don't have these amazing storyboard scenes that I could like share. It's tons of writing and drawing from the characters and a few set sketches, but yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of to a certain extent, that does make a lot of sense. I mean, because especially with your particular style of animation, so much of it is by hand. So much of it is very tactile. You're not doing, it's not necessarily built out of the computer.
Right.
It's something very organic. So, it does kind of make sense that you wouldn't necessarily do storyboards, and you would basically have a set of ideas, and that's how you kind of start to piece things together. And I was just curious. Just curious, especially because of the fact that, I mean, I haven't talked to a whole lot of animators, so I'm curious about that process because of the fact that it's, especially with yours, it is so tactile, it's so personal, as well as it's so you're not just working on sketches in the computer that you will animate in the computer to bring to life. It's something, it's actual characters, actual sets that you're going to be manipulating by hand in order to get these shots. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? I'm curious what you do you mean the word personal? I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that. Well, yeah, it's interesting to hear.
Well, I mean, I think to a certain extent, the vast majority of films, to a certain extent, are personal. Whether you're, whether you're talking about a $200 million blockbuster, whether you're certainly when you're talking about independent films and films that you're going to see on the film festival circuit, though, that you basically have to, find the funds for. Right. I mean, you have to get those funds to make the movie. You have to get the time to make the movie. You have to get the collaborators in order to make the movie, or you're making it, or you're doing wearing a lot of those hats yourself, in which case it's an extremely personal experience. But there is, especially with stop motion, especially with the models that you did on The Garden Sees Fire, you can tell that there's a lot of love to the process. And I think that's the case. And I think that's the case. That's one of the things that's so unique, I think, about animation in particular, is that there's going to be a level of the artist that there's going to be something of the arts that comes out in that project and in those ideas, in those images that come out on screen.
That's beautiful, Brian. Thank you for sharing that.
And
yeah,
I mean, and I think that is, but yeah, I mean, basically you look at the character designs, you look at the ways in which, even though, you know, watching The Garden Sees Fire, it's obvious that everything is more or less artificial, like, but was clearly made.
Yeah.
And it was clearly designed in a way that is that's very lived in. And I think that's one of the unique things about stop motion in particular, because of the fact that somebody has to create those.
Yeah.
Somebody has to create that.
Yeah.
And you're manipulating that in order to tell your story. And so every aspect of it has to be correct and to your satisfaction. So how can it not be personal?
Yeah.
Regardless of the story you're telling.
Yeah, right. It's just great to hear about the personal in the process. Do you know what I mean? Beyond the concept and the ideas and investment of time, it's really interesting to hear about the personal in the actual materials in the process. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a composer. I mean, I don't compose as much anymore, but when I do compose, like all of those notes, all of those sounds that I choose to put into that piece, I'm choosing for very specific reasons. And so that is a personal expression to me. So it's like, you know, would you necessarily say that yes, I did a film score a few years ago for a friend of mine's film, you know, is it as personal to me in terms of what I wanted to convey as some of my other pieces? No, I wouldn't necessarily say so. But the choices I made in terms of instrumentation, in terms of the themes that I wrote, in terms of the way I wanted to tell that story, was personal. Because of the fact, and it's interesting because of the fact that we actually there was recently an interview with John Williams, the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest film composer of all time. And it's funny because of the fact that a lot of people were flipping out because of the fact that one things he says, like, he doesn't necessarily, and it's basically the point of, he doesn't necessarily regard film music as highly as he does classical music. And it's like, I mean, honestly, I as much as I love film music, I can acknowledge that it's nowhere on the level, say, Beethoven's Ninth or Mozart's Requiem. I mean, or The Rite of Spring. It's just not, because of the fact that you've got it tied to the visual experience. It's tied to, as much as I love John Williams' work, it's tied to my feelings on the film that he is writing it for.
Right, they're not able to be separate.
Of course it's not going to be as, of course it's not going to have the same collective impact as classical music. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, of course, it also sounds like a composer who, you know, he recognizes he probably in his older age is starting to go, why are you regarding me the same way you we regard some of these great composers of generations past? It's like, that's not me. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of self-deprecation, and I'm pretty sure he probably doesn't completely believe it. But at the same time, it's like, I completely understand where he's coming from to a certain extent. But no, I mean, I think, you know, I think especially and even just filmmaking in general, I think is a very personal filmmaker, a personal process. You don't need to have, I don't think you need to have the filmmaker say, oh yeah, this was deeply personal.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I
It's
think,
like
yeah.
to understand that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think the lived in experience is an interesting component of of stop motion, especially.
Yeah.
I liked what you said. I liked those words you used. That was interesting to me.
Well, and especially well, and again, it goes back to what you said about animation. I think
Mm-hmm.
especially with animation, because so much of it comes out of the artist's hand,
Mm-hmm.
not just their imagination, but their hands. Like they're
Right.
whether you're putting pencil to paper or
Mm-hmm.
paint to paper, paint to image in terms of doing cell animation, or you're creating the designs in a computer, or you're doing the designs in terms of a model that you're going to be moving around. That's as personal as filmmaking gets,
Yeah, I
because of the
love that.
fact that
Yeah.
it's that creation
Mm-hmm.
on that level that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of filmmakers just don't really do, even if they do have a deep connection, emotional
Mm-hmm.
connection to
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
work.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting distinction. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
um what type of, we sort of kind of, I don't think we include this part. I didn't get this part in the interview last time, but what are some of the some of the films that you've found yourself most inspired by, if you find yourself inspired by a lot of films, or
And
what artists in general?
yeah, so in terms of, do you mean in terms of animators or more conventional? I mean more
It could
like,
be animation, could be live action,
um,
just
I think
filmmakers
the
in
first
general.
film I really loved was Sally Porter's Orlando. That was probably the first film that I saw. I think it's like 1992, maybe was the release date of that film.
Okay.
And that's the first film that I saw, which is a live action, narrative, has some experimental components, but narrative film where I felt that there was room in this medium for me to kind of to use it as an art form. I felt like it was a
Hmm.
very artistic film. I didn't start making films till many years after that. And then in terms of like my favorite kind of animators, obviously the Jan Smackmeyer and the Quay brothers, and contemporary animators, Stacey Steers, and people that really are kind of like using the medium, and I would say in a very tactile way, and also a way that is infusing abstract narratives. And I tend to like things that are less traditionally narrative in that way. I would say those are my primary things. In terms of artists that, oh my gosh, there's just 60 million artists I could say in terms of who I really love. I'm blanking on anyone right now. I'm trying to look at my shelf. My mind is a blank in terms of who I could say who I absolutely love. Oh, the other animator that I really love is Natalie Durberg. She's even, I would say, possibly more tactile than myself in terms of she works in clay, and there's just her films are almost like grotesquely physical, which is kind of alluring, and it's just like I feel like you could just feel the presence of the materials in a way that's really, really kind of like right in your face in some way, and that's kind of really lovely. And she has a really wonderful relationship with her partner, who's also her composer. I can't think of anyone else to say right now off the top of my head, but that'd be who I kind of, some kind of animators that I watch the work of. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Do you, I mean, I know you, when you go in for a film festival, we kind of touched on this, and like I said, we watched after our interview, we watched a film ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
how often, how much do you, when you go in for a film festival, how much do you try to take in of the festival itself just basically whatever the time constraints allow, or uh, do sometimes you plan for a little bit longer stays?
I've since starting to kind of tour with Garden, I have seen the value of is being in trying to engage as much as possible in terms of meeting other filmmakers for community and connection, trying to form relationships with people like yourself in terms of critics. So it's so valuable to hear other perspectives on my work and to have that dialogue and conversation. Because just like we talked about for a minute when you said, the lived in, process. I mean, this is wonderful to have these exchanges and experiences. And so I really love the community of film. And so I feel like that's what I'm really enjoying in the festival. And then also seeing other people's work. The showcase I just saw at Portland, the stop motion showcase I was in, there was some really exciting work from around the world in that, and pieces I wouldn't see otherwise or have not seen while I've been touring with the film. And so that was really exciting to see different ways approaching the medium, different ways people work. And I just think and also to meet new filmmakers for support. I met a lot of filmmakers in Portland who are also stop motion animators for continuing conversations and for support of my work going forward. So that's really, really exciting. So I feel like, it's also incredibly draining. And so though I really, really love the conversations, I also get kind of just tired from them. And I think it's just a lot of interaction. So I think it's kind of pacing oneself, but realizing they're just so valuable, and it's just a moment of time and then it's over, right? I mean, it's this intensity and it's this kind of truly remarkable experience. And you have all these people coming together that really feel passionate about something and they love it. Then you have the audience who also is looking to have an experience, and you want to engage as much as possible. But there's also sometimes just a limit for that, but it's like trying to capitalize on that moment in time, which is truly unique, special experience. I think film festivals they're really a gift. I mean, to be able to get to meet other people you would not meet any other way, and to have people appreciate the artistry that goes into these works, because they take so much time to make, and to have people be able to engage with that on such a intimate level, I think is truly a special experience.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, no, I agree completely about the film festival experience. I know when I first, it's funny because of the fact that my first experience with a film festival was 20 plus years ago. I went to one in Alabama, and I was going for one specific film as a fan. I wasn't doing it as a critic. And they led us into the auditorium early, and we got to see one of the short film blocks, and it's like, okay, this is cool. I mean, granted, it would take me a while to get back into film festivals on a regular basis. And, I think I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I just attended Dragon Con, and up until the pandemic, they have film festival there. So back in 2011, I started to take in some short film blocks from that film festival, and that was really exciting to start to see, and that got the edge in. Then I started to cover Atlanta Film Festival, then Renegade Film Festival. Then during the pandemic, it was weird because of the fact that I did Renegade Film Festival in 2020. That was the last major time I had in movie theaters until before movie theaters shut down. And then virtual film festival for Fantasia Fest, so I watched all the short films there. And Atlanta Film Festival, they made it work for online, and they had like a pop-up drive-through at the plaza that
fun.
And so that was basically a lot of my film festival for a couple of years, and then everybody went back to in person. So it's like, okay. But no, I mean, I know for me, getting that early exposure to short film blocks, I think was a big part of me realizing it's more than just the feature films. And it's more than just the big films that you may have heard about, or the stars that you're familiar with and stuff like that. that is going to matter. It's going to be these. I mean, it helps that I'm just naturally curious about film
Yeah,
in
yeah,
general. Like,
yeah.
I'm somebody who I will take in whatever films I can. Like, like, there's not really much that I am uninterested in
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to film. And so it's like I'm willing to give most films a chance. And it's one of those things where seeing movies on off the beaten path, this is part of why like it's difficult because of each film festival is a living, breathing
Yes,
thing. That's one of the
exactly.
things
Yeah,
that's so interesting when
yeah,
you
yeah.
realize it's not just about the features, it's about the
Right.
films as well, short films as well, and getting a chance to talk to a lot of those filmmakers, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
really helps out tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so grateful that we were able to have that connection
Yeah, me
going
too.
into your film playing at the Atlanta Film Festival. You know, it started through email, and then when we met, it was such a great conversation. It was
Yeah.
really such a wonderful start to the weekend for me.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
And I'm so glad that we've been able to continue this.
I am too,
Where
because I think it's like I think because it's almost a bit of a creative conversation, right? I feel like, and when we're talking, we're each learning something about the other, and also learning something more about the medium in itself. And so it's like kind of expanding
yeah.
through the conversation. I think that's really exciting.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when I'm able to have those type of conversations with filmmakers, it's really fulfilling to be able to have those.
Hmm.
Well, Kiera, thank you very much for joining me. Where can people find your work or just find you online?
So my Instagram is at Kiera Faber Artist. My website is kierafaber.com, and Vimeo. Gosh, I don't know what my Vimeo is. What is it? I guess if you Google me, you'll get my Vimeo. But I also have, I don't have my full films on Vimeo. I have some older films. A couple have been remastered. I have a retrospective screening coming up in Min Animate in Minnesota in 2 weeks from, I think, in a week and a half. And then the film, I guess I can't say where it's going because it's still a secret. So I can't say this where it is on the secret circuit yet. But anyway, but yeah, I'd love people to look at my work. So thank you, Brian, for this special chance to engage and share ideas and to learn from one another, which I think is part of the journey and part of the process of why we make films and why we care about them.
It has been a true pleasure to talk to you, and I definitely want to make a point of doing so again in the future.
I love that, Brian. I love that.
I'd like to thank Kiera for joining me on the podcast. It has been a real privilege and pleasure to get to know her this year, and it's been really beneficial to me personally with everything going on in my life. It's been really beneficial to me to get to know her. And that's going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast. Thank you, as always, for listening. Thank you very much for having an interest in what I have to say about films. And especially if you listen to episodes like this, really kind of appreciating why I want to do film episodes like this, because of the fact that it's dealing with subjects that interest me, and so it's something that just really it's something that I really just like, and something I really am interested in having these conversations with and meeting these people and having to hear what they have to say. Like I said, you can check us out at patreon.com/SonicCinema. My review of The Garden Sees Fire is at In Their Own League, and I hope to have something up there soon about Andor.
And you can also check us out at podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, Good Pods, wherever. But first and foremost, you can always find me at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.